The pheromone device activates with a soft hiss, flooding the conference room with an invisible cloud of potent Eliani hormones. Junior diplomat Philip Carter freezes, his hand still touching the ornate alien artifact he'd mistaken for a harmless decoration. Across the table, Princess Gia's azure skin flushes a deep violet, her body emanating a pulsating bioluminescence that bathes the room in an otherworldly glow. Chaos erupts in the carefully orchestrated interstellar summit. Eliani guards surge forward, forming a protective circle around their princess. Human security forces converge on Philip, weapons drawn. The first diplomatic meeting between humanity and the Eliani teeters on the brink of disaster. Amidst the pandemonium, Gia's eyes lock onto Philip's. A voice, clear and distinct, resonates in his mind. Human, I'm so turned on, and this is just the beginning. The psychic message catches Philip off guard, his shock evident on his face. Gia's guards misinterpret his expression, tightening their formation around the princess. Human security forces respond in kind, escalating the tension in the room. High-ranking officials from both species spring into action. Emergency communications channels activate between Earth and Eliani Prime. Accusations of sabotage fly back and forth, each side suspecting the other of orchestrating this diplomatic catastrophe. Philip finds himself unceremoniously detained, hustled away from the conference room by stern-faced human agents. They grill him relentlessly, probing for signs of Eliani manipulation or compromise. His protests of innocence fall on deaf ears as the gravity of the situation becomes apparent. Meanwhile, Gia is whisked away to the Eliani embassy. Medical staff hover around her, concern etched on their faces as they examine her unprecedented reaction to the human's presence. The combination of the pheromones and Philip's unique scent has triggered something unexpected in the princess's biology. As Gia undergoes tests, intelligence agencies from both Earth and Eliani Prime launch covert investigations. The true nature of the pheromone device and its effects on human-Eliani interactions become the focus of intense scrutiny. The fate of future relations between the two species hangs in the balance. Unbeknownst to the frantic officials and wary diplomats, the incident has set in motion a rare and irreversible Eliani biological process within Gia. A complex chemical bond forms, linking her inexorably to Philip. This unforeseen connection promises to have far-reaching consequences for both individuals and their respective species. The summit, meant to usher in a new era of interstellar cooperation, now stands on a knife's edge. The potential for a groundbreaking alliance competes with the looming threat of catastrophic conflict. As both sides scramble to contain the fallout, the true impact of Philip's accidental activation of the pheromone device remains hidden, waiting to reshape the future of human-Eliani relations in ways no one could have predicted. As the dust settled from the chaotic scene in the conference room, Philip Carter found himself in a sterile interrogation chamber aboard Earth's orbital station. The harsh fluorescent lights cast an unforgiving glare on his face as he sat, hands clasped tightly on the metal table before him. "For the last time, Mr. Carter, explain your actions," demanded Special Agent Marcus Steele, his voice a low growl. The agent's piercing gaze bore into Philip, searching for any sign of deception. Philip exhaled slowly, fighting against a growing headache. "I've told you everything. I didn't know what the artifact was. It was an accident." Steele slammed his palm on the table, the sound echoing in the small room. "An accident that nearly caused an interstellar incident? Do you expect me to believe that?" As Philip opened his mouth to respond, a searing pain lanced through his skull. He gasped, doubling over in his chair. Vivid images flashed before his eyes. Alien landscapes, shimmering crystal spires, and amidst it all, Princess Gia's violet-flushed face. "Carter, what's wrong with you?" Steele's voice seemed distant, muffled. The door hissed open, and Dr. Sarah Chen rushed in, medical scanner in hand. "His vitals are spiking. We need to get him to the medical bay now." As the medical team whisked Philip away, Steele watched with narrowed eyes, suspicion etched on his face. Millions of miles away on Eliani Prime, Princess Gia paced her chambers, her skin pulsing with an intense bioluminescence. "I must go to him," she insisted, her normally melodious voice strained. Captain Zorak, her personal guard, stood at attention by the door. "Your Highness, it's too dangerous. The humans may see it as an act of aggression." Gia whirled to face him, her eyes blazing. "You don't understand. I need to be near him. It's like a physical ache." Dr. Ilara Zen entered the room, her expression grave. "Princess, I've made a discovery. The interaction between the human pheromones and your biology has triggered something unprecedented, the celestial bond." Gia's eyes widened. "The ancient mating ritual? But that's just a myth." "Not anymore," Dr. Zen replied. "Your physiological changes are irreversible and specifically linked to the human, Philip Carter. If you remain separated, the consequences could be severe for both of you." Without hesitation, Gia straightened her posture, her royal authority evident in every movement. "Prepare my ship, Captain Zorak. We leave for the human orbital station immediately." As Gia's sleek vessel approached Earth's orbital station, alarms blared throughout the human facility. General William Hayes's voice crackled over the comm system. "Unidentified Eliani ship, you are entering restricted space. Turn back immediately or face the consequences." Captain Zorak's hands tightened on the ship's controls. "Princess, we're being surrounded by human interceptors. Your orders?" Gia's face was a mask of persistence. "Continue our approach, Captain. Open a channel to the station." Before she could transmit, the human fighters took up attack positions around her ship. The situation balanced on a knife's edge, with the slightest miscalculation threatening to ignite an interstellar war. Inside the station, Philip Carter fought against waves of nausea as he stumbled through the corridors, Dr. Chen at his side. Alarms blared and security personnel rushed past them, weapons at the ready. "We need to get to the docking bay," Philip gasped, driven by an instinct he couldn't explain. Dr. Chen nodded, supporting him as they moved. "I believe you, Philip. Whatever's happening between you and the princess, it might be our only chance to prevent this situation from escalating." They rounded a corner and came face to face with Commander Victor Reeves and a squad of security officers. "Halt!" Reeves barked, raising his weapon. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice steady. "Commander, please, we may be the only ones who can stop this conflict before it begins." Reeves hesitated, his eyes darting between Chen and the clearly unwell Philip. The moment stretched, taut with tension. Suddenly, Philip's knees buckled. As he collapsed, a psychic wave erupted from him, washing over everyone in the vicinity. For a brief instant, they all felt what Philip felt. The irresistible pull towards the approaching Eliani ship, the desperate need to unite with Princess Gia. Reeves lowered his weapon, shocked. "What the hell was that?" "That," Dr. Chen said, helping Philip to his feet, "is why we need to get to the docking bay. Now!" As they raced through the station, Dr. Ilara Zen's frantic messages finally broke through the communications interference. Her voice, tinged with urgency, reached both human and Eliani leadership simultaneously. "The celestial bond is not just a biological phenomenon," she explained. "It's a psychic link that, if severed, could have catastrophic consequences for both our species. We must allow Princess Gia and Philip Carter to reunite, or we risk unleashing a psychic backlash of unimaginable proportions." In the docking bay, tension crackled like electricity as Gia's ship prepared to dock. General Hayes, his face grim, gave the order to stand down, even as his finger hovered over the launch controls for the station's defense systems. The airlock hissed open, and Princess Gia stepped onto the station, her azure skin glowing brilliantly. Her eyes scanned the bay, searching. At that moment, Philip burst through the doors on the opposite side, Dr. Chen and Commander Reeves close behind. Time seemed to slow as Philip and Gia locked eyes across the crowded space. Without a word, they moved towards each other, drawn by a force beyond their control. The assembled humans and Eliani watched in stunned silence as the distance between them closed. As their hands touched, a visible energy surged between them. The station's lights flickered, and everyone present felt a wave of something wash over them. It was a sensation of completion, of two halves becoming whole. Philip and Gia stood transfixed, oblivious to the chaos around them. Their union, born of an accidental encounter with an ancient artifact, now held the key to the future of human-Eliani relations. But as the initial shock wore off, questions began to surface. What did this mean for interspecies diplomacy? How would their respective governments react? And most pressingly, what would become of Philip and Gia, now inexorably linked by a bond older than their civilizations? As these questions hung in the air, one thing became clear. The accidental activation of the pheromone device had set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy in ways no one could have foreseen. The surge of energy that pulsed between Philip and Gia rippled through the station, leaving everyone in stunned silence. As the initial shock wore off, chaos erupted once more. General Hayes's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, this is not a drill. We are under potential Eliani attack. Secure all vital areas and prepare for possible hostilities." Dr. Chen, still supporting Philip, locked eyes with Commander Reeves. "We need to get them to the medical bay, now." Reeves hesitated, his gaze darting between the newly reunited couple and the growing tension in the docking bay. Finally, he nodded. "Follow me. We'll take the service corridors." As they hurried through the station's winding passageways, alarms blared and personnel rushed past. Philip stumbled, his body racked with tremors. Gia reached out, steadying him with a touch that sent visible sparks of energy dancing across their skin. "What's happening to us?" Philip gasped, his voice strained. Dr. Zen, who had accompanied Gia from her ship, spoke up. "Your physiologies are altering rapidly. We need to run tests immediately." They burst into the medical bay, startling the on-duty staff. Dr. Chen immediately took charge. "Clear the room. This is a level 1 quarantine situation." As the medical team scrambled to comply, Reeves positioned himself at the door. "I'll keep watch. Do what you need to do, doctors." Dr. Chen and Dr. Zen worked in tandem, their movements precise and urgent. They hooked Philip and Gia up to an array of monitoring devices, their eyes widening at the readings. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Chen murmured, studying a holographic display of Philip's cellular structure. "His DNA is rewriting itself in real time." Dr. Zen nodded, her attention fixed on Gia's readouts. "The same is happening to the princess. Her biological makeup is shifting to become more human." Philip's skin began to emit a faint glow, reminiscent of Gia's bioluminescence. Simultaneously, Gia's normally fluid movements became more rigid, mimicking human biomechanics. Their eyes met across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. Without warning, both gasped, their backs arching as a shared vision overtook them. They saw vast crystal cities, shimmering under alien suns. Humans and Eliani walked side by side, their forms blending and merging in impossible ways. At the center of it all stood a great spire, pulsing with the same energy that now coursed through their veins. The vision faded, leaving them breathless and shaken. "Did you see that?" Philip asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Gia nodded, her eyes wide. "The ancient cities of our people. Together." Before they could discuss further, the door burst open. Commander Reeves stumbled in, his uniform singed and torn. "We've got company. Colonel Jackson's team is on their way. They're under orders to take you both into custody." Dr. Chen's face hardened. "On whose authority?" "General Hayes," Reeves replied, his expression grim. "He's declaring them potential bioweapons." Captain Zorak, who had been standing silently in the corner, stepped forward. "We cannot allow that to happen. The princess must be protected at all costs." Reeves turned to face the Eleni guard, tension radiating from both of them. For a moment, it seemed another confrontation was imminent. Then, surprisingly, Reeves extended his hand. "Agreed. We need to work together if we're going to keep them safe." As Zorak clasped Reeves's hand, a distant explosion rocked the station. Alarms shrieked with renewed urgency. "They're here!" Reeves growled, drawing his sidearm. "We need to barricade the entrance." As Reeves and Zorak began fortifying the medical bay, Dr. Chen and Dr. Zen huddled around their patients, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "The bond between them is intensifying," Dr. Zen explained. "If my theories are correct, complete physical union could trigger a psychic shockwave powerful enough to incapacitate both human and Eliani forces." Dr. Chen's eyes widened. That could stop this conflict before it escalates further. But the risks are considerable, Dr. Zen finished. The process could be fatal if interrupted. Philip and Gia, still connected to the monitoring devices, exchanged a look of perseverance. "We'll do it," Philip said, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. Gia nodded, her skin pulsing with intensified bioluminescence. "It's the only way to save both our peoples." As the doctors began preparing for the procedure, the sounds of battle grew closer. Weapons fire echoed through the corridors, punctuated by shouts and the screech of tearing metal. Reeves and Zorak stood shoulder to shoulder at the barricaded entrance, an unlikely alliance forged in crisis. "Whatever happens," Reeves said, his voice low, "we have to buy them enough time." Zorak nodded, his alien features set in unshakable focus. "Indeed, human. Today we fight as one." The barricade shuddered under a heavy impact. Colonel Jackson's voice boomed from the other side. "This is your final warning. Surrender the subjects immediately, or we will use lethal force." Inside the medical bay, Philip and Gia lay side by side on a makeshift altar of medical equipment. Their bodies glowed with increasing intensity, pulses of energy interfering with the nearby monitors. Dr. Chen and Dr. Zen worked frantically, adjusting settings and stabilizing vital signs. "We're ready," Dr. Chen announced, her voice tight with tension. "It's now or never." As Philip and Gia reached for each other, the barricade finally gave way. Colonel Jackson burst into the room, his weapon raised. "Stop this immediately," he roared. But it was too late. As Philip and Gia's lips met, a blinding light engulfed the medical bay. A wave of pure energy exploded outward, rippling through the station and beyond, into the vastness of space. In that moment, everything changed. The blinding light faded, revealing Philip and Gia still locked in their embrace, their bodies pulsing with a soft, otherworldly glow. Colonel Jackson and his team stumbled backward, their weapons clattering to the floor as they clutched their heads, overwhelmed by the psychic shockwave. Dr. Chen blinked rapidly, her vision clearing. She glanced at her monitors, eyes widening at the readings. "Their vitals are stabilizing," she announced, voice filled with awe. "The bond, it's complete." Across the station, alarms fell silent. The once chaotic corridors grew still as both humans and Eliani found themselves frozen in place, caught in the wake of the celestial bond's energy. Commander Reeves lowered his weapon, exchanging a bewildered look with Captain Zorak. "What just happened?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Zorak could respond, General Hayes's voice crackled over the intercom, sounding uncharacteristically subdued. "All personnel, stand down. I repeat, stand down. Cease all hostile actions immediately." In the medical bay, Philip and Gia slowly separated, their eyes locked on each other. Philip's skin now emitted a faint bluish glow, while Gia's movements had become more fluid, almost human-like. I can feel you," Philip murmured, reaching out to touch Gia's face. "Not just physically, but in your mind," Gia finished, her voice filled with wonder. "I can sense your thoughts, your emotions." Dr. Zen approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial shock. "Fascinating," she breathed, scanning the couple with a handheld device. "The physiological changes are unprecedented. We need to run more tests to understand the full extent of—" She was interrupted by the hiss of the medical bay doors sliding open. Admiral Helena Frost strode in, her uniform immaculate despite the chaos that had engulfed the station moments before. Her intense look swept the room before settling on Philip and Gia. "Dr. Chen, Dr. Zen," she addressed the scientists, her tone clipped and professional. "I want a full report on their condition within the hour. Commander Reeves, secure this area. No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization." Reeves snapped to attention. "Yes, Admiral." Frost turned to Philip and Gia, her expression softening slightly. "Mr. Carter, Princess Gia, I apologize for the misunderstanding that led to this confrontation. It seems we've all underestimated the significance of your bond." Gia straightened, her royal bearings shining through despite her disheveled appearance. "Admiral, what happens now? Our people—" are no longer on the brink of war, Frost finished. Whatever energy you released, it's forced both sides to stand down. For now, at least. She paused, considering her next words carefully. But this situation is far from purposed. Your bond has implications that reach far beyond this station, or even our two species. Philip stepped forward, his hand intertwined with Gia's. Admiral, we want to help. Whatever this bond means, whatever it can do, we're willing to... A sudden tremor shook the station, cutting Philip off mid-sentence. Alarm klaxons blared to life once more. Admiral, a frantic voice called over the intercom. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the station. Systems are going haywire. Frost's composure cracked for a moment before she regained control. It seems your bond is having some unexpected side effects, she said to Philip and Gia. We need to get you to a more secure location, now. As they rushed from the medical bay, Philip and Gia at the center of a protective formation of security personnel, the station's lights flickered ominously. Crew members they passed in the corridors stared openly, some with awe, others with fear. Where are you taking us? Gia asked, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. To the station's core, Frost replied, not breaking stride. It's the most shielded area we have. We need to stabilize your energy output before it tears this station apart. They reached a heavily fortified door, which Frost opened with a complex series of commands. As the group entered the cavernous chamber housing the station's power core, Philip gasped. The massive reactor at the center of the room pulsed with the same energy that now flowed through his and Gia's bodies. It's responding to us, he said, feeling a pull towards the swirling energy. Dr. Chen, who had followed them closely, quickly set up a portable monitoring station. Their energy signature is synchronizing with the core, she reported, her fingers flying over the controls. If we can harness this, channel it properly, we might just save the station, Dr. Zen finished, already working alongside her human counterpart. As the scientists worked feverishly to stabilize the situation, Philip and Gia stood hand in hand before the pulsing reactor. They could feel the power flowing between them, through them, connecting them to the very heart of the station. In that moment, surrounded by the swirling energies of their bond in the station's core, they both knew that nothing would ever be the same. The celestial bond had not just changed them, it had set in motion events that would reshape the future of both their species. The reactor's pulsing intensified, bathing the chamber in an otherworldly light. As Philip and Gia's bond resonated with the core's energy, glimpses of possible futures flashed through their shared consciousness. Visions of cooperation, conflict, and the vast unknown of space stretching out before them. Their journey, they realized, was only beginning. As the reactor's energy stabilized, the immediate crisis passed, but a new sense of urgency filled the air. Admiral Frost's communicator chirped insistently. She stepped away to answer, her expression growing more troubled with each passing moment. When she returned, her face was grim. We have a situation, she announced, her voice tight. Multiple attacks have been reported on key facilities across Earth and Eliani Prime. Our training facility is no longer secure. Philip and Gia exchanged alarmed glances, their newfound bond humming with shared anxiety. What does this mean for us? Philip asked. Before Frost could answer, the station shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the sound of distant explosions echoed through the corridors. We're under attack, Frost said, drawing her weapon. We need to move, now. As they rushed from the reactor chamber, Philip suddenly stumbled, clutching his head. I can feel them, he gasped, hostiles, approaching from multiple directions. Gia's skin rippled, her bioluminescence shifting to match the station's walls. I can help us evade them, she said, her voice determined. Frost nodded sharply. Lead the way. They moved swiftly through the station's corridors, Philip's empathic senses guiding them away from danger, while Gia's camouflage kept them hidden from patrols of black-clad attackers. As they passed a viewing window, they saw shuttles swarming around the station, some bearing the insignia of human supremacist groups, others marked with the symbols of Eliani purists. It's a coordinated attack, Dr. Chen whispered, horror in her voice. But how? They had no time to ponder as they reached a sealed security door. Frost entered a complex code, and the door slid open to reveal a small hangar bay. A sleek spacecraft sat ready, its engines humming with scarcely controlled power. "The Harmony," Frost explained as they hurried toward the ship. "It's our only chance to get you off station and continue the mission." As they approached the ship's boarding ramp, a barrage of weapons fire erupted from the far side of the hangar. Philip instinctively raised his hands, and a shimmering energy field sprang into existence, deflecting the incoming shots. "Go!" he shouted to the others. "I'll hold them off." Gia stood firm beside him, her skin pulsing with intense light. "We do this together," she said, her voice resonating with power. Their combined abilities created a dazzling display, blinding their attackers and buying precious seconds for the others to board. Dr. Chen and Dr. Zen rushed up the ramp, clutching data drives and prototype components. "We can't leave without them," Dr. Zen insisted as Frost tried to usher them inside. A new voice called from within the ship. "We won't." Prince Zarek emerged, his regal bearing at odds with the chaos around them. He extended a hand toward Philip and Gia. "Come, we must depart immediately." With a final burst of energy, Philip and Gia's bond pulsed outward, knocking their assailants off their feet. They sprinted for the ship, diving through the closing hatch as the Harmony's engines roared to life. The spacecraft shot out of the hangar bay, weaving through a hail of weapons fire from the attacking shuttles. Philip and Gia, exhausted but exhilarated, watched through a viewport as the station receded behind them. "We made it," Philip breathed, turning to Gia with a relieved smile. But their moment of respite was short-lived. Prince Zarek approached, his expression grave. "I'm afraid our troubles are nowhere near the end," he said. "The attacks were not limited to the station. Both Earth and Eliani Prime are in turmoil." He gestured to a holographic display showing news feeds from both worlds. Images of burning buildings and clashing protesters filled the screen. Headlines scrolled past, each more alarming than the last. "Human supremacist group strikes Eliani embassy." "Eliani purists demand expulsion of all humans." "Senator Blackwood calls for severance of interspecies ties." Gia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "This can't be happening," she whispered. Admiral Frost's voice crackled over the ship's comm system. "Harmony, this is Frost. Your mission parameters have changed. You are now tasked with more than exploration. The future of human-Eliani relations rests in your hands." Philip looked around at the diverse crew of humans and Eliani aboard the Harmony. Each face reflected a mixture of perseverance and uncertainty. He turned to Gia, feeling the strength of their bond. "We won't let them tear us apart," he said firmly. As the Harmony accelerated away from Earth, leaving the familiar behind, Philip and Gia knew they were embarking on a journey that would test not only their bond, but the very possibility of interspecies cooperation. With the weight of two worlds on their shoulders, they steeled themselves for the challenges that lay ahead in the vast, unknown expanse of space. Space. Their mission had taken an unexpected turn, but the weight of their responsibility remained. As the Harmony pushed deeper into uncharted territory, the initial excitement of their escape gave way to a tense routine. Days stretched into weeks, with the crew working tirelessly to maintain their course and purpose. Philip and Gia spent hours in the ship's lab, working with Dr. Chen and Dr. Zen to understand and harness their evolving abilities. The celestial bond hummed between them, a constant reminder of the unique power they now wielded. But their progress was suddenly interrupted by a series of alarming malfunctions. It started with minor glitches, lights flickering, communication systems cutting out momentarily. Soon, however, the problems escalated. "We're losing power to the life support systems." Dr. Chen's voice rang out across the bridge, her fingers flying over the control panel. Prince Zarek rushed to her side, his royal composure slipping as he assessed the situation. "The engine core's output is fluctuating wildly. If we can't stabilize it—" His words were cut off as the ship lurched violently, throwing crew members to the floor. Emergency klaxons blared, their shrill cry echoing through the corridors. Philip helped Gia to her feet, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. They could feel the ship's distress resonating through their bond, a discordant note in the symphony of energy that flowed between them. We need to go to the engine core, Philip said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Our connection to the celestial bond might be the key to stabilizing the systems. Gia nodded, her bioluminescence pulsing in time with the ship's faltering heartbeat. It's risky, but we're the best chance we have. As they made their way to the engine room, dodging sparks and rushing crew members, a new crisis emerged. Prince Zarek's voice crackled over the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is Prince Zarek. We've detected a distress signal from a nearby planet. It appears to be of Eliani origin, possibly from a long-lost research outpost. Philip and Gia exchanged glances, the implications clear. Such a discovery could provide crucial information about the early days of human-Eleni relations, perhaps even shedding light on the origins of the celestial bond itself. They reached the engine core, a massive chamber pulsing with nearly unleashed energy. Dr. Zen met them at the entrance, her face etched with worry. The bond-powered systems are becoming increasingly unstable, she explained, leading them to a control panel. We need you to interface directly with the core. It's dangerous, but... We understand, Gia interrupted, her grit evident. We'll do whatever it takes. As Philip and Gia prepared to link with the ship's systems, Prince Zarek entered the chamber, his expression grave. We have a decision to make, he announced. Do we focus on stabilizing the ship, or do we divert our course to investigate the outpost? Both options carry significant risks. The crew debated fiercely, weighing the immediate danger against the potential long-term benefits of the outpost's data. In the end, it was Philip who spoke up, his voice cutting through the argument. We go to the planet, he said firmly. If we can uncover information about the bond's origins, it might help us not only save the ship, but also address the larger conflicts threatening both our species. The decision made, the Harmony altered course, its systems groaning under the strain. As they approached the mysterious planet, long-range scans revealed a hellish landscape shrouded in toxic fog. Standard landing procedures are impossible, Dr. Chen reported, her voice tight with tension. The atmosphere will corrode our equipment within minutes. Philip stepped forward, his skin glowing faintly with bond energy. Gia and I can survive down there. Our enhanced abilities should protect us long enough to reach the outpost. Prince Zarek nodded grimly. I'll accompany you. My knowledge of ancient Eliani technology may prove crucial. As the trio donned their environmental suits, the rest of the crew worked frantically to keep the Harmony functional. Dr. Zen calibrated their gear, her fingers trembling slightly. These suits will buy you some time, but not much, she warned. The moment you feel the atmosphere breaching your defenses, you must return immediately. They boarded a small shuttle, the craft shuddering as it detached from the Harmony. Philip took the controls, guiding them through the turbulent atmosphere with preternatural skill. As they descended, the toxic fog parted to reveal a landscape of twisted metal and crumbling stone. The remains of the Eleni outpost loomed before them, a silent testament to the perils of deep space exploration. They landed with a jolt, the shuttle's systems already showing signs of corrosion. As they stepped onto the planet's surface, Philip and Gia's bond flared to life, creating a shimmering barrier around them. This way, Gia said, her senses attuned to the faint energy signatures emanating from the ruins. I can feel something powerful, ancient. They made their way through the decaying structures, Prince Zarek marveling at the remnants of his people's past. This technology, he murmured, examining a corroded panel. It's far more advanced than anything in our current archives. Deeper they ventured, their suit integrity slowly degrading despite the protection of Philip and Gia's bond. Finally, they reached a sealed chamber, its doors still intact after centuries of abandonment. This is it, Philip said, placing his hand on the ancient metal. Whatever secrets this outpost holds, they're in here. As Prince Zarek worked to decipher the locking mechanism, Philip and Gia combined their abilities, channeling the celestial bond's energy into the dormant systems. With a groan of protesting metal, the doors slowly parted, revealing a room filled with humming machinery. At the center stood a massive computer core, its surface covered in intricate Eliani script. Prince Zarek approached it reverently, his eyes wide with awe. This is beyond anything I've ever seen, he breathed. If we can activate it, the knowledge contained here could change everything. As the prince began the delicate process of awakening the ancient system, Philip and Gia stood ready, their bond pulsing with anticipation. They could feel the weight of history pressing down upon them, the future of two species hanging in the balance. Suddenly, the computer core sprang to life, bathing the chamber in a soft blue glow. Streams of data flowed across its surface, a torrent of information that threatened to overwhelm them. "We need to interface directly," Gia said, reaching for Philip's hand. "It's the only way we'll be able to process all of this in time." Their fingers intertwined, and in that moment, their consciousness merged with the ancient machine. Visions of the past flooded their shared mind. Early encounters between humans and Eliani, the first manifestations of the celestial bond, and the promise of a united future. But their revelation was cut short by a violent tremor that shook the entire facility. Alarms blared as the computer core began to overload, its systems unable to handle the sudden surge of energy. "We need to leave, now!" Prince Zarak shouted, clutching a data core he had managed to extract. "The planet's becoming unstable." As they raced back to their shuttle, the ground beneath their feet began to crack and split. Geysers of toxic gas erupted around them, testing the limits of their protective gear. Philip and Gia, their minds still linked, used their enhanced awareness to guide the group safely through the chaos. They reached the shuttle just as a massive sinkhole began to form beneath it. With no time to spare, Philip and Gia focused their combined power, creating a field of energy that lifted the shuttle clear of the collapsing ground. The effort sent shocks of pain through their bodies, pushing their bond to its absolute limit. As they broke free of the planet's atmosphere, the shuttle's systems began to fail, damaged by the corrosive environment they had just escaped. With the Harmony still grappling with its own malfunctions, a safe return seemed impossible. In that moment of crisis, Philip and Gia made a choice. They pushed their bond further than ever before, their individual consciousness merging into a single unified being. This new entity extended its power around the entire shuttle, shielding it from the harsh vacuum of space. The Harmony's crew watched in awe as the shuttle approached, surrounded by a cocoon of shimmering energy. As the smaller craft docked, the energy field dissipated, revealing Philip and Gia collapsed on the floor, unresponsive but alive. Dr. Chen and Dr. Zen rushed to their aid, quickly assessing their condition. "They're in some sort of comatose state," Dr. Zen reported, her voice tight with concern. "Their brain activity is off the charts, but their bodies are shutting down." As the medical team worked to stabilize Philip and Gia, Prince Zarak emerged from the shuttle, clutching the precious data core. "We have the information," he announced, his voice a mixture of triumph and worry. "But at what cost?" The crew of the Harmony now faced a race against time on multiple fronts. They needed to decipher the ancient data, repair their faltering ship, and find a way to bring Philip and Gia back from the brink. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, with the success of their mission now more critical than ever. As the Harmony limped onward through uncharted space, its crew united in purpose despite their differences. The true test of their grit was only just beginning. As the Harmony limped onward through uncharted space, its crew united in purpose despite their differences. The true test of their willpower was about to unfold. Days passed in a haze of frantic activity. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair the ship's damaged systems, while the medical team hovered anxiously over Philip and Gia's unconscious forms. Dr. Chen and Dr. Zen pored over the data streaming from their neural monitors, exchanging worried glances as they observed the unprecedented levels of brain activity. On the fifth day, a change rippled through the medbay. Philip's fingers twitched, followed by a soft gasp from Gia. The medical team rushed to their side as the pair slowly opened their eyes, blinking in confusion at their surroundings. "Welcome back," Dr. Zen said softly, her relief evident. "How do you feel?" Philip and Gia turned to look at each other, their movements perfectly synchronized. When they spoke, their voices overlapped in an eerie harmony. "We are different," they said. "Connected, more than before." Dr. Chen leaned in, fascination overriding her concern. "Can you describe what you're experiencing?" The pair closed their eyes, their brows furrowing in concentration. "Our thoughts, they flow together. It's difficult to tell where one ends and the other begins. As the doctors continued their examination, Prince Zarek burst into the medbay, his eyes wild with excitement. "I've done it," he exclaimed, brandishing a datapad. "I've decoded the ancient records." The prince's revelation sent shockwaves through the ship. The crew gathered in the main conference room, all eyes fixed on the holographic display as Zarek explained his findings. The truth of the celestial bond's history unfolded before them, a tale of a grand civilization built on the union of humans in Eliani, and its tragic downfall in an event known as the Sundering. As the implications of this knowledge sank in, the ship's sensors blared to life. Captain Elena Vasquez, who had been listening intently to Zarek's presentation, snapped to attention. "We've got a massive object dead ahead," she reported, her fingers flying over the control panel. "Bringing it up on the main viewer now." The holographic display shifted, revealing an enormous structure floating in the void of space. Its design was unlike anything they had ever seen, a blend of human and Eliani architecture on a scale that defied belief. "It's a space station," Dr. Chen breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "And look at those energy readings. It's still operational." Captain Vasquez frowned, her military training kicking in. "We should proceed with caution. We don't know what kind of defenses it might have." But Philip and Gia were already moving towards the view screen, their movements fluid and purposeful. "We need to go there," they said in unison, their voices carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "The answers we seek are within." A tense debate erupted among the crew. Captain Vasquez argued for caution, while others, emboldened by the recent discoveries, pushed for immediate exploration. In the end, the pull of potential knowledge proved too strong to resist. As the Harmony carefully maneuvered towards the ancient station, Philip and Gia prepared to board along with Prince Zarek, Dr. Chen, and a security team led by Captain Vasquez. The docking procedure was tense, the crew holding their breath as the airlocks engaged with a series of metallic clanks. Stepping onto the station was like entering another world. Dust-covered corridors stretched into darkness, broken only by the occasional flicker of long-dormant systems coming to life at their presence. Philip and Gia moved with eerily perfect coordination, seeming to know instinctively which way to go. As they ventured deeper into the station, the walls began to hum with energy. Panels lit up as they passed, responding to some unseen signal. Prince Zarek trailed his fingers along the strange markings that covered every surface, his expression a mix of awe and concentration as he worked to decipher their meaning. "This technology," he murmured, "it's beyond anything in our current records. The level of integration between human and Eliani designs is astounding." They reached a massive set of doors, intricately carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Philip and Gia approached, their hands raised in perfect symmetry. As their palms touched the cool metal, the door slid open with a low groan, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond. At the center stood a towering structure that could only be the quantum computer mentioned in the ancient records. Its surface pulsed with soft light, tendrils of energy reaching out as Philip and Gia drew near. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and a holographic projection sprang to life around them. The team watched in stunned silence as the history of the human-Eliani alliance played out before their eyes. They saw the rise of a civilization more advanced than they could have imagined, built on the foundation of countless bonded pairs working in harmony. But the wonder turned to horror as the projection shifted, showing the catastrophic events of the Sundering. The pain and anguish on the faces of the bonded pairs as they were forcibly separated was almost too much to bear. Captain Vasquez turned away, her fists tight, while Dr. Chen watched with tears streaming down her face. As the final images faded, the station around them came alive with a surge of energy. Alarms blared, and the quantum computer's pulsing quickened to a frantic pace. "What's happening?" Captain Vasquez demanded, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. Prince Zarek's fingers flew over a nearby console, his eyes widening as he translated the flashing symbols. "It's some kind of defensive system," he shouted over the growing din. "It's targeting the Harmony and other ships in the sector. It sees them as threats." "We need to evacuate now," Vasquez ordered, but Philip and Gia remained rooted in place, their eyes fixed on the quantum computer. "No," they said, their voices carrying a strange resonance. "We can stop this. We can access the systems, but we need to go deeper." As the team watched in a mix of horror and fascination, Philip and Gia's bodies began to shimmer, their outlines blurring as if they were melting into one another. They reached out, their hands sinking into the surface of the quantum computer as if it were liquid. "What are you doing?" Dr. Chen cried, taking a step forward only to be held back by Prince Zarek. "Saving us all," Philip and Gia replied, their voices now indistinguishable from one another. "But the cost, we don't know if we'll come back from this." As energy crackled around them, the merged form of Philip and Gia began to glow with an otherworldly light. The station's alarms reached a fever pitch, and the team could feel the buildup of power around them, knowing that at any moment the ancient weapons could unleash destruction across the sector. In that moment of crisis, with the fate of two civilizations hanging in the balance, the crew of the Harmony watched as their friends pushed the limits of the celestial bond further than ever before, risking everything in a desperate bid to rewrite the future of human-Eliani relations. As energy crackled around them, Philip and Gia's merged form pulsed with an otherworldly light. The station's alarms reached a deafening crescendo, the buildup of power around them tangible and ominous. In that moment of crisis, with destruction looming, Philip and Gia made their decision. Their eyes locked, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they stepped forward, their bodies already beginning to merge at a molecular level. Dr. Chen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she watched their separate forms blur into a single shimmering entity. "Evacuate now!" Captain Vasquez shouted, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms. But Dr. Chen and Prince Zarek remained rooted in place, transfixed by the incredible transformation unfolding before them. The merged being that was once Philip and Gia approached the quantum computer. Their skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns, casting an eerie glow across the chamber. As they reached out, their hands sank into the computer's interface as if it were liquid. The moment they connected, a surge of energy coursed through the station. The quantum computer's display erupted in a dazzling array of colors and symbols, reflecting the unprecedented merge of human, Eliani, and machine consciousness. Inside the quantum network, Philip and Gia's combined consciousness raced through centuries of data and code. They navigated complex security protocols and fail-safes within human speed and precision. Their enhanced perception allowed them to manipulate the code on a level beyond normal comprehension. Captain Vasquez's voice crackled over the comm system. "The station's weapons have locked onto the Harmony and multiple targets across the sector. We have minutes before they fire." In response, Philip and Gia's merged form intensified its efforts. Tendrils of energy extended from their body, interfacing with various systems throughout the station. The structure itself seemed to respond to their presence, ancient machinery humming to life after eons of dormancy. Dr. Chen and Prince Zarek watched in awe as the hybrid being worked. Symbols and equations flashed across the computer's display faster than their eyes could follow. The air around them vibrated with palpable energy. With seconds to spare, Philip and Gia successfully overrode the defensive protocols. The weapons powered down, and the threatening hum of energy throughout the station subsided. A collective sigh of relief echoed through the chamber. But their task was far from complete, the merged being delved deeper into the station's systems, unlocking secrets long forgotten. As they processed the information, their physical form continued to evolve. The boundary between flesh and energy became increasingly blurred. Suddenly, the hybrid being's eyes snapped open, glowing with newfound knowledge. "The station?" they spoke, their voice a harmonious blend of Philip and Gia's. "It's not just a weapon, it's a beacon." Before anyone could respond, the station began to reconfigure itself. The militant exterior fell away, revealing a gleaming, organic structure beneath. The satellite array that once threatened destruction now aligned into a massive transmitter. "What's happening?" Dr. Chen asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. The hybrid being turned to face them, its form now barely recognizable as human or Eliani. "We're reawakening its true purpose, to rekindle the bond between our species on a massive scale." As the transformation neared completion, the being that was once Philip and Gia faced their final challenge. To fully activate the station, we must push our bond to its absolute limit, they explained. We may not survive as individuals. Without hesitation, they embraced their destiny. The hybrid form began to glow with increasing intensity, energy building to a critical point. Dr. Chen and Prince Zarek shielded their eyes as the light became blinding. A pulse of pure energy erupted from the station, washing over the harmony and rippling outward at faster-than-light speeds. As it traveled, it carried with it the template of Philip and Gia's perfect bond, along with the accumulated knowledge and history stored within the quantum computer. On board the Harmony, the crew watched in astonishment as the energy wave passed through them. Humans and Eleni alike felt a newfound connection, a deep understanding of each other that transcended language and culture. As the energy dissipated, the ancient station settled into a stable configuration, now a shining beacon of unity amidst the stars. From its core emerged a new being, neither fully Philip nor entirely Gia, but a perfect synthesis of human and Eleni. This hybrid entity, glowing with power and wisdom, addressed the awestruck crew of the Harmony. The activation of the station has ushered in a new era for both our species, it announced, its voice resonating with otherworldly harmonics. The being explained that the ability to form celestial bonds had been restored to all humans, and Eliani, though the choice to do so remained a personal one, the united knowledge of their ancient civilization was now accessible, offering solutions to many of the problems that had plagued both societies. As the implications of this transformation began to sink in, the hybrid being turned its gaze to the vast expanse of space visible through the station's viewports. Our journey is a long way to go, it said, a hint of anticipation in its voice. The cosmos holds many more secrets, and together, we will unlock them. The crew of the Harmony, still processing the miraculous events they had witnessed, found themselves filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They stood on the precipice of a new age, one that promised to reshape the very fabric of human and Eliani society. As the hybrid being began to interface with the station's systems once more, preparing for the next phase of their cosmic journey, the crew realized that their mission had evolved into something far greater than they could have ever imagined. The boundaries between species, between organic and machine, between past and future, had blurred. What lay ahead was a vast, uncharted territory of possibility. The Harmony, now docked with the ancient station, pulsed with newfound energy. Its crew, forever changed by the events they had witnessed, prepared to embark on a journey that would take them to the farthest reaches of the galaxy and beyond. The age of division was over. The era of true harmony had begun.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.